Hey everyone, it's Jacqueline
and Adam
for Pixie Dust PhD. Recently, we watched all of the official Disney princess movies in chronological order. In today's video, we will be giving you our thoughts about the movies as a whole and ranking those princess movies. So if you're interested, stay tuned. Thanks for joining us today. If you're new here, hey, I'm Jacqueline. This is my partner Adam, and on this channel we mostly talk about Disney Vacation Club, Walt Disney World, and occasionally we dabble in other Disney topics. For example, today would be an other Disney topic where we're talking about those princess movies. If you enjoy the content on the channel, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can ring the bell icon to receive notifications for whenever I post new videos. We love to hear your thoughts. If you want to chat about the Disney princess movies or really anything Disney, definitely leave a comment down below, or you can hit me up on other social media platforms like Twitter and Instagram at PixieDustPhD. For our official Disney princess watch through, we did use the official list, which meant a lot of the princesses you're thinking of probably weren't included. The official list in chronological order is Snow White, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, and then there's a pretty big time skip and we move into the Renaissance period. From there, it's The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Pocahontas, Mulan, and then we have another but smaller time skip. Then we get The Princess and the Frog, Tangled, Brave, and Moana. For our watch through, we only considered those main entries, so we didn't watch any of the sequels and none of that factored into our rankings. And then specifically, we're ranking movies as a whole, not necessarily just our favorite princess. For me, that'll be how much do I want to rewatch this movie, basically. So we'll each have our own individual considerations about how we're rating the movie overall. For example, songs may come in stronger play for me than Adam. Okay, with that, let's get started. So we'll do this ranking from the bottom to the top, and we'll begin with our bottom three because I suspect we have the same bottom three and maybe even in the same order. My bottom three movies, starting from the bottom, are Sleeping Beauty, then Snow White, and then Cinderella.
And my bottom three are Snow White, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, so not the same order, but the same movies.
Yes, same movies.
So let's just talk about these three sort of as a whole. So these older movies, I think they're still really beautiful. The animation holds up really well, and the songs that are there are very good. But the plot lacks something, I would argue. It feels a little empty to me.
Yeah, it's all very formulaic and very bland, and there's also so many much better remakes of these characters or these stories that were inspired by folklore. So, well, maybe not necessarily all better.
Yeah.
But there's just so many different entries into pop culture that, I just feel very disconnected from that time period. And it's like, yeah, these are cute, but I don't want to spend an afternoon watching this princess movie when there's a lot of better other content out there that would get me excited, I guess.
The other thing I really didn't like about these movies was the villains. I think actually the villains are good. Like, they're compelling characters when you take them sort of out of that moviescape. Like, Maleficent is very popular. But in the movies themselves, what are the villains' motivations? Super unclear. Like, Snow White's stepmom is just rude.
Yeah.
Maleficent is just angry, and then similarly Cinderella's stepmom is just rude.
Yeah.
And then also the villain like battle when it exists is pretty lame.
Yeah,
it really
it's 5
doesn't take,
seconds long.
Yeah, it doesn't take that much to kill Maleficent, and for being sort of that all-powerful, and honestly seemingly she is so overpowered. Like,
yeah, and like super feared by everybody, but like all it took was just like,
throw a sword.
Throw a sword, yeah.
So it cheapened it to some extent for me because the villains get built up. I don't really understand why they're scary, but I can buy into the fact that everyone's freaked out by these people, but then defeating them is like not that hard at all.
Yeah, super easy.
Moving on to the next three entries in our list, mine are Pocahontas, followed by Beauty and the Beast, and then The Little Mermaid.
And for me, it goes Pocahontas, Mulan, and then The Little Mermaid.
Oh, interesting. So pretty similar again, but still slightly different. So let's talk about Pocahontas for a second, since that fell in the same slot for us. Markedly better plot-wise than the bottom three entries, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it gives you a really, beautifully animated movie, updated. That late 90s nostalgia definitely hit home for us. Because that's right when we probably both really started watching a lot of Disney movies. Yeah,
and the songs, well, not all of them. Some of the songs were super fantastic. Like Just Around the River Bend, I think is highly underrated, and I still love that song. I thought it was very compelling upon the rewatch still as an adult.
Yeah, but again, it's definitely not one of my top tier favorite movies to watch. There's just a lot of parts that are like very uncomfortable, especially in like today's heavily politicized climate where you get such very clear, basically racial tension that erupts into violence, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like very uncomfortable. But still, great songs. Definitely more of a developed plot. Characters are more developed, and yeah, just a good movie.
It's a good movie. I think it's problematic. I think actually a lot of films from less recent times are going to be problematic and are worth critiquing, but of course you can still enjoy them. I just think it's a little bit lower on the enjoyment list for me personally. Okay, and then we had different middle entries in this section of our list, but then we both had The Little Mermaid in the same slot as well.
Yeah, so for me, Little Mermaid is, it's the first movie back, right, from that long pause. So, I mean, they definitely had a lot going for it. The music is timeless, I think, right?
Phenomenal, yeah. Still really good.
But again, still just not as engaging as some of the other entries.
I think it's the same villain problem for me where you don't really understand Ursula's background. She mentions briefly in the beginning that she used to live in the castle, so you understand, I guess, she's an outcast, but you don't know why.
Right.
And then also beating Ursula was not that hard, even though she was giant and had the Triton and should have been all-powerful.
Like, oopsie daisy, I'm dead.
Yes. I think in the Broadway they explain that Ursula is Triton's sister, or I haven't seen the Broadway, but I listened to clips here and there. So I think, with time they understood that adding that backstory would make it more compelling, but without it, And then also obviously the overarching theme where Ariel's willing to give up her literal voice to meet a man she has met for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I don't love that.
I did like the dog animations.
Yes.
And they really play up on that dog, I think, in later content.
The dog is super cute.
Yeah.
What a great dog. Songs are really great. Animation's beautiful. The plot overall, I think, is definitely better than some of the others, but weaker on the villain motivation and battle side for me. Mm-hmm. And then, some of the... I don't even know if they're undertones. They feel pretty blatant about what Ariel's willing to do.
Yeah, it's very blatant.
I don't love that.
A lot of these entries in this Renaissance era are very much like that.
Yeah, okay. And then you had Mulan in your middle slot.
Yeah. I think for me, it's just kind of one of those tales where, they had like the song very heavy front end and then it's just, they try and do like an action animated movie on the back end. Yeah. And I just never really was able to get that shift.
There's like a disconnect.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, it doesn't bother me as much, but clearly. And then instead of Mulan, I had Beauty and the Beast, which I think I even was surprised how low it ended up being on my list. Prior to this rewatch, I held that movie in very high regard. And again, I think you can still enjoy movies even though they're problematic, but there is sort of a threshold for me where something becomes so problematic that it does take away from my enjoyment. And the outright toxic masculinity in that movie was like physically hard for me to watch. I assume that the writers knew what they were doing with Gaston and were writing it from the lens of, hey, toxic masculinity is terrible. You all probably have someone like this in your town. They are the villain. And I appreciate that. That being said, I almost think it was too subtle in that I don't know that it was clear to everyone that he was the villain. Like, there are very problematic people I've come across in my life who revere Gaston as like a hero and they want to be him. And I find that to be awful.
Yeah, I feel like that. I do like this movie for a lot of the reasons why it won or it was nominated for Best Picture. It's just a good movie. But, there's certain things where like, hey, you watch it 20 years later and with your experience in life and you're not a kid watching a quote-unquote kids movie. Yeah. And you just experience a lot different and that can really impact your enjoyment, which, makes it important that you kind of re-examine, how you feel about things over time.
Mm-hmm. But I still think, despite how overtly uncomfortable, honestly, I was at times, the songs are really magnificent. Mm-hmm. I do like that Belle is a pretty strong, independent woman, given her constraints. There's only so much you can do in that time period, but she does it pretty well. I like that her dad's an inventor. I think it's interesting that he becomes ostracized and is an outcast. I think there's a lot of social commentary in there. I like the Beast's arc. I like that also their love story happens over time. Like, there is a changing of the seasons.
It's not like, hey, I met you once at a well in Snow White.
Right. It's not 5 seconds. Like, there is some sense of growth, which is nice. Yeah. So, overall, I still think it is a good movie. It just ended up being lower in my list because I would rather rewatch other princess movies, I think, before watching Beauty and the Beast again.
And, I can just go ahead and give you a preview that was certainly Actually, the next one on my rankings.
Oh, so
Yeah.
right after Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast is next for you?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that feels correct.
Did you want to talk about your next one then?
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on.
Okay. So we're going to do another group of three, since I already gave away one of mine. So after Beauty and the Beast, I would put Aladdin and then Princess and the Frog.
And then my next three would be Aladdin, then Tangled, then Princess and the Frog. So again, fairly similar.
Mm-hmm.
Aladdin was a common entry in both of these sections of our list, so we'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit. Aladdin is a funny entry in the princess movies, not because, you know, Jasmine isn't a princess, but the movie's not about Jasmine.
Yeah, it's about Aladdin.
It's about Aladdin.
It's called Aladdin.
Yeah. So that, I just think it's strange, like most of the princess movies are about that person or occasionally that person and one other. So Beauty and the Beast, the Princess and the Frog, right? But they are still title characters. And then you get to Jasmine and it's like, hey, it's about Aladdin. But so I really love Aladdin as a movie. It's been a very compelling movie my whole life. The Jasmine part is just less important, which is maybe why it isn't higher up in the list, because I was trying to bring the princess aspect into this a little bit.
If you're watching a princess movie and the protagonist, while one of them is the princess but not the main one, it certainly takes away from the overall rankings, right? If you're trying to watch a movie and then it's about a princess and it's the main protagonist, but that's not what you get here. You get, you know, an amazing performance by Robin Williams as Genie, and then that just kind of overshadows everything, which makes it a good movie, but certainly not necessarily a great princess movie in the rankings here.
Yeah. One Jump Ahead is one of my favorite Disney movie songs of all time. It's probably one of the only non-Frozen songs I have fully memorized and can just, you know, with the drop of the hat, spit it out. And that's been true for, I don't know, 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
It's a constant in my life, and I love it. And then, like Adam said, the Genie performance is obviously great. I think we all felt that way before Robin Williams passed, but, you know, that happening certainly makes a larger impact. Finally, regarding Aladdin, I do think Jasmine being a minor character, they did a pretty decent job with her. Given the circumstances, they did try to give her some agency. She was pretty flippant, for example, which I appreciated. That being said, I think it goes with a long-standing movie trope of, oh, hey, you're a woman and you have to follow XYZ rules. The whole movie happens and then they just change the rule at the end. And so in this case, it's Jasmine has to marry a sultan or a prince or whatever. And then, you know, the whole movie happens. It turns out Al's a good guy, even though he's not a prince. So they're just like, let's change the rules. And I guess it's nice that they change the rules at the end, but I mean, why couldn't you have just done that at the beginning? Then there's no movie, then there's no Jasmine, right? Like, so yeah, that's just a personal gripe of mine, I guess.
So let's talk about Princess and the Frog. Very fun movie. Having a movie about New Orleans and in that setting is fun. You can do a lot with that, and I think they really did a good job of kind of capturing that special zest that you find in New Orleans and just having fun with that in the movie. But I just am not the biggest fan of, you know, Princess Frog movie. Yeah.
Like the premise of the movie.
The premise, yeah. It's like, you know, you get a body switcheroo.
Yeah.
Rom-com about Princess and a Frog, like playing on that fairy tale.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, something I'm super engaged in.
I kind of also just dislike Naveen. He comes across a little bit bratty to me, and I guess he does grow.
I mean, he is a brat.
Yeah, right. He grows a bit during his time as a frog and during the journey of the movie.
He's very hesitant.
Yeah, and I just don't understand, like, does he really grow enough for Tiana to be like, yeah, I want to be with that guy? Because I would still be like, okay, it's nice meeting you, bye. So, yeah, the songs were really good. I had only seen Princess and the Frog, I think, one time before we rewatched it recently, and I was surprised at how much of the songs I remembered, which I think is very telling of how strong they are.
Yeah, it's very catchy.
I also like Lottie as a side character. She was weirdly supportive and relatable in that I think we all have that friend who comes from, maybe not all, I have many friends who come from means higher than I do, but they use it for good, basically, and they're not throwing it in your face, and they are very supportive friends, so I thought that was a nice touch. And of course, I really love Tiana overall. She's super hardworking. She is working really hard to achieve her dreams and her goals. She understands what that means. I think she has 2 restaurant jobs at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, double shifts.
Which is so brutal. And also, like, slight commentary on class there and, you know, minimum wage. But yeah, so I like Tiana a lot as a princess. Of course, I think we would all agree it's really unfortunate that the two black leads in a Disney princess film, the first ones, spend most of their time in this movie as frogs. But I mean, in a movie called The Princess and the Frog, like what can you expect? I guess
you're buying your ticket.
Yeah,
to see a frog.
I'm looking forward to, they're getting a new Disney Plus series, I believe, where I think they have outright said they will not be frogs. So I'm looking forward to that. Since we've already talked extensively about Beauty and the Beast, which is Adam's entry in this portion of the list, we'll move on to my last entry, which is Tangled. Tangled is one of the more recent movies in the Disney princess movies, and it is a fun take on an old tale. I really like the songs. I think Mandy Moore did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, she was great.
She's so good. That being said, it does go back to the sort of just old trope that I don't love, where, you know, Rapunzel falls in love more or less instantly. I guess they go on a journey over a couple days.
Yeah, a couple days.
But not that long.
Yeah. And she is barefoot the entire time.
Well, that makes sense, though.
Yeah, but still.
Yeah.
There's just this fun whimsy in the movie as well, which is very fun to watch, and when combined with the animation, have the fun animal sidekicks galore. They really stepped it up in this movie. Instead of them being like an animal or transforming like in the last one, they actually had their fun animal sidekicks that, you know, they may not have actually talked and had conversations with the characters, but it was just a fun movie.
Pascal definitely talks in his own way.
True.
You know what's happening with Pascal. Mother Gothel is the villain in this movie, and unlike prior movies, you do really very clearly understand her motivation, right? She needs Rapunzel in order to stay young. Unlike other villains, she's not necessarily all powerful. She really doesn't have any powers, I don't think.
No, she just has, I have a lot of wisdom to manipulate you by being old powers.
Right.
Yeah.
Similar to Gaston, I feel like Mother Gothel's evilness was maybe a little bit too subtle. The main evilness I think people walk away with is, well, Gothel kept Rapunzel locked up in that tower for 18 years in order to use her hair healing powers for Gothel's own good. To me, her real evilness lies in all of the day-to-day, really toxic, abusive, manipulative, chiding comments that she's doled out to Rapunzel her entire life.
Yeah, she utilizes those microaggressions to basically abuse her into submission, to basically stay in this tower. And you can see those scars in Rapunzel the second that she's out in the real world, even though she's so happy-go-lucky person. You can see what that, abuse has done to her character and stunted her growth. And it's really nice to kind of see her grow throughout the movie, even though it may not be believable.
To me, Gothel is actually one of the scarier Disney villains, simply because I think her evilness is really real. That's stuff you see in the real world all the time, as opposed to, I don't really know anyone who can transform into a giant dragon.
Nope, not me.
So I found Gothel to be really compelling, and that is an aspect of the movie I appreciated a lot. I also think that the songs are phenomenal.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. It's a fun movie. Has a lot of good beats to it. It's pretty tight overall. Definitely a good entry into the princess movies.
Moving on to the top 3 movies in each of our lists. My top 3 would be Mulan, then Moana, and then number 1 is Brave.
And my top 3 are Tangled, Brave, and then Moana. So pretty similar but different number 1s.
My Mulan is also significantly higher than yours was.
That's very true.
So let's talk about my version of Mulan a little bit, I guess. So Adam's very right in that the songs stop really abruptly, and then it sort of tries to turn into this action film. That doesn't really bother me, it turns out. I think a lot of Mulan's ranking for me in the rewatchability lies really in nostalgia more than maybe movie quality, simply because I am an Asian American female, so that movie coming out when I was a kid changed my world, basically. It was the first time I ever felt even slightly represented in film or TV at all. I really enjoy Mulan's motivation. I feel like I understand her on a very visceral level, and I can see myself in her in a lot of ways. There also is, of course, this huge feminist thread throughout the movie, which at times obviously is flawed and certainly could be updated to meet more of the 2021 standards of feminism, but considering the time when that was made, I think it really pushed some boundaries.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of these princess movies have done it, or attempted to try and do that and reach out and show what have been historically underrepresented characters in these princess movies, and just fostering that inclusive atmosphere is certainly something that you see in later entries after Mulan as well.
Yeah, I think so. And even Mulan she's not a princess, right? Disney sort of remade their rules to be included in the official princess list to include like a great act of heroism or something in order to include Mulan, because she does stand out so much from all the others, and I just appreciate that so much. But admittedly, I think it's this high on my rankings a lot from nostalgia and like my lived experience than the movie itself. So Adam's third entry was Tangled, which of course we've already touched on. So we both have Brave and Moana at the top, just in different orders.
Right. So let's go ahead and talk about Moana first, and then we'll talk about Brave. Moana for me is, I think, really a fantastic movie, and is atop of my rankings because of the combination of the story, the soundtrack, the characters, their development, their arcs. I really enjoy it, and just the motivation is just really strong for me. I really like, we're going to go out there and see what's out there. I have this drive to succeed and do what I want, and also asking questions along the way, which is made for a great movie in my opinion.
I like the environmentalism thread throughout the movie. It reminded me vaguely of a lot of Studio Ghibli movies in that sense, and that's not something you normally see in Disney movies, so I appreciated that. I also loved that it's not a love story, right? It's not about Moana finding her true love or true love's first kiss or anything like that. She has a mission and she is going to accomplish it. It's about her personal growth as a character.
Yeah, and I think the story does a good job of keeping that consistent beat throughout, which makes for a rewatchable experience.
Yeah, songs are so fantastic. The casting, I thought they did a really good job. I personally enjoy movies where little parts of the plot sort of come back and there is this thread through. So the grandma's very present in the beginning. She obviously continues to be present throughout the movie. Unlike in a lot of movies when parents or grandparents die, right? She doesn't just sort of disappear. Similarly, I like the whole Taka Tafiti tie-in. I thought that was really clever and I enjoyed it very much. So yeah, Moana is a great movie and I would never hesitate to put it on, I don't think.
But of course, we have to talk about your number one, Brave.
Yeah. If any of you watched our Pixar movie ranking video, I think it's no surprise that Brave is my number one in the princess list. Merida's fantastic. And the movie also is really good. Similar to what I was talking about with Moana, there are threads throughout the movie that matter the whole time, right? Mordu comes up in the very beginning, sort of in the middle, and then at the end. And that's pretty surprising for a villain to be so present throughout the movie.
Yeah, they did a good job of doing that even without a significant amount of screen time.
And like the tale that the witch tells about the fourth brother, that comes up. I think Merida's mom says the tale early on. The witch talks about it vaguely. And then of course the fourth brother ends up being Mordu. So I think plot-wise, I think it's a very tight plot. I mentioned this in our Pixar movie that I think Monsters, Inc. is a super tight plot where everything matters. Brave's probably not quite Monsters, Inc. level to me. But certainly of the princess movies, I think it's the tightest plot.
Yeah, it has that. It's a Pixar movie, and it is at certainly a different standard of excellence, right? That you didn't really see from any of the prior princess entries up to the point when it was made. Right,
because Moana came out after Brave. So yeah, I agree. Up until Brave, I think that is the tightest plot.
And then I really enjoyed. They didn't necessarily have as many like fantastic songs, in my opinion, as Moana.
It's not a musical.
Right, it's not a musical, but they did a really good job of creating a very believable world in that you could, really immerse yourself in this story and really root for the characters and the animation, of course. Pixar was amazing, and it was just at a different level than pretty much any other princess movie. I definitely think there's a gap, right, between our top two movies.
Oh, between the top two and the rest of the list.
Yeah, in terms of how much we'd want to rewatch these.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Brave does begin to fall into that trap where Merida is supposed to be betrothed and like they could just change the rules, right, at the beginning and then it's not a big deal. But what I prefer about the way Brave does this trope is at the end, it's not like the king and queen have just totally rewritten the rules. It's that Merida and her mom go on this journey together to grow and learn from one another and sort of bend things a little bit. So I also really enjoy that Merida does not end up being betrothed at the end of the movie, unlike, you know, Jasmine is getting married at the end of the movie.
I think that was like one of the sequels, was them getting married or something.
Right. It's heavily implied in Aladdin that Jasmine and Aladdin are getting married. So it's not like she gets to go be her own independent person and figure out who she is outside the palace. She's just marrying Aladdin.
Jasmine's not shooting for her own hand.
Jasmine is not shooting for her own hand.
Yeah. I think that's true for a lot of the princesses as well.
Whereas Merida presumably gets time to grow. And even the suitors seemed relieved that this was the case, that they could all, they're kids, right? That they could all just, you know, continue to do their thing, and we'll see how it goes. So I did enjoy that play on the trope. And finally, about Brave, I just wanted to mention, I thought it was interesting, the dynamic between the king and the queen. So you could tell throughout the movie, when the king was supposed to talk or give a speech or something, Queen Eleanor often would step in and then the king would just repeat her words, right? I think every woman has experienced this in meetings. It's interesting that they kept that in this movie given the time frame. I'm not exactly sure what year this is meant to be in, but obviously a long time ago, where I was surprised that Eleanor had as much agency as she did. Obviously it's limited, right? The king still has to repeat her words in order to be heard or whatever. But I thought it was nice that they did seem to give Queen Eleanor the amount of power that they felt they could.
Yeah, she was definitely a big influence in that family, which makes for a hilarious movie when she turns into a bear.
Yeah.
So, definitely a very fun movie, very good movie. An excellent Pixar movie. And that, of course, makes it top tier princess movie.
Wrapping things up, there were just a few themes that stuck out to us. As we previously mentioned, obviously the time period seemed to affect things. I think that makes perfect sense given what we as adults in 2021 would sort of expect from a movie compared to what folks of decades past may expect.
Yeah, I really want an entertaining 90 minutes if I'm going to watch a Disney movie. Certainly I do expect you know, some tropes, some themes going into it, and just that it's going to be a fun ride. And I think that, you know, given our perspective on the world and our experience, certainly some of those earlier movies are not as rewatchable as the later ones. But it's just really interesting to kind of watch all these movies in chronological order and kind of take a look through our lens of nostalgia and really see how they resonate with us. So it was definitely a fun activity.
For me, definitely the motivation, particularly for the villain, but even to some extent for the lead protagonist or princess if they were not the lead protagonist, played a big factor. And I found myself feeling a lot more satisfied if I understood where all the characters were coming from than if things felt a little more random and I just had to believe this random thing about this villain is so bad because they are.
I did believe, though, when a villain fell to their death and you didn't see them anymore, that they definitely are dead. And that happened, I think, almost every movie.
It's a common Disney trope.
Yeah, but it still continued.
Yeah.
In pretty much all of these movies, without question. Except Moana, I think. Where you just put the heart back.
Well, Moana doesn't really have a villain, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess it's Taka. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. And last for me, for an overarching theme, is obviously I enjoy movies more where the lead female character, typically the princess, right, has more agency, has more power, is doing her independent thing, and is perhaps less tied to old stereotypes of, you know, what women are, how they should act, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and these old fairy tales are often very flat stories without the context of the time or the oral tradition that they were created from. So while they maybe have been really great retellings in those times, you know, we already know those stories and the complexity, and it's just such a flat viewing experience in terms of the characters overall that it really kind of holds back our level of enjoyment compared to some of the newer, more creative entries. Yeah,
certainly in both Moana and Brave, I think we would agree that it feels rich and complex and like there are whole characters as opposed to these more flat characters, like you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Those were our list of the official Disney princess movies. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Who's your favorite Disney princess? What aspects of watching a movie make it super enjoyable for you? Do the songs matter more to you, or is it about that princess transformation scene, for example? We can't wait to hear your thoughts. May the rest of your day be filled with princess royal magic, and we'll see you real soon at Pixie Dust PhD.